We have an Arctic foreign policy. The Arctic foreign policy contemplates greater engagement not just in Canada's north, but internationally as well. And so when we open a consulate in Greenland, we are expanding Canada's diplomatic footprint in another Arctic region. I've had numerous conversations with other foreign ministers of Arctic countries, and we all agree that now is the time to ensure that our collective will and footprint is placed in Arctic territory.
Just as a follow-up, what do you hope to accomplish by opening a consulate in Greenland? What specific diplomatic gains are you looking for Canada?
Canada is an Arctic nation. 70% of our coastline, 40% of our landmass is interfacing with the Arctic. We have an Arctic foreign policy. The Arctic foreign policy contemplates greater engagement not just in Canada's north, but internationally as well. And so when we open a consulate in Greenland, we are expanding Canada's diplomatic footprint in another Arctic region. I've had numerous conversations with other foreign ministers of Arctic countries, and we all agree that now is the time to ensure that our collective will and footprint is placed in Arctic territory. Canada's recent budget, delivered just last week, put down $80 billion in defense spending. We are going to reach 2% this year and 5% of GDP by 2035. Much of that spending is going to involve dual-use infrastructure in the Canadian Arctic. Ports, roads, railways. But from a foreign minister's standpoint, my concern is not only on the implementation of those commitments, but also the broader work we can do internationally to ensure that we are collaborating and cooperating with other Arctic nations in support of global peace and security. That's the reason. Thank you.
Ahmed Hazim, Al Jazeera. I have a question about tonight's dinner, the working dinner about global security and peace. Your remarks earlier said that you are going to discuss the long path forward toward peace, and I'm going to just be specific about the Gaza plan, peace plan. The move toward the second phase of that plan seems that it's very complicated rather than what as we expected before. And now the aid trucks coming into Gaza is not enough. The international force is not established yet. The discussions with the UN for the UN mandate for this is not going as smooth as we expect. What are you as a group at the G7, and what do you expect to listen from Secretary Europe in this dinner to push this thing forward?
Thank you for the question. And I appreciate the sentiment that you are raising, which is that we want a ceasefire to be long-lasting and to yield the benefits that are outlined in the peace plan. And Canada certainly welcomes the peace plan and President Trump's work to end the war in Gaza. It's crucial. We believe that Hamas must disarm and must have no role in the governance of Palestine. There must be this continued emphasis on a ceasefire and, as you say, the unhindered flow of humanitarian aid. And I will say that Canada has placed almost $400 million in humanitarian aid, much of it with international organizations, some of it remaining on trucks in areas like Jordan. We need that aid to flow. It is contemplated in the peace plan, and humanitarian aid must flow. Gaza must be demilitarized with no displacement of the Palestinian people. So Canada's initial and continued position is that the peace plan must be upheld, and parties around the world should continue to support it. And I've been in touch with many of my counterparts in the Arab countries to ensure that they know that Canada is here to support the implementation of the peace plan through humanitarian aid, through support with electoral reforms, through ensuring that we are offering expertise from a security standpoint. So the bottom line is Canada's continuing to work with international partners around the world to ensure that Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security. The return of hostages is ongoing and needs to continue, and I think we should remember that this is a process and wouldn't be accomplished in 1 week or even 1 month, but that we need to stay with it for the medium to long term as well.
My second question is about Sudan. Sudan is a very vulnerable place right now. The Quartet last week was supposed to issue a statement saying that there is movement toward a peaceful solution, but then al-Fashir pulled. And now, what are you as a group going to do to push both parties to sit down and maybe end this?
Mm-hmm. So Canada, I will begin by saying, like many of you in this room and many countries represented here, is absolutely horrified by the attacks in al-Fashir and condemns the reported mass killing of over 2,000 civilians. And we urge all parties to uphold international law, protect civilians, and allow the unimpeded passage of humanitarian aid immediately. Canada has put on the table humanitarian aid for the people of Sudan, and we have done so since the conflict began. As examples, $64 million in humanitarian assistance, $24.8 million in peace and stabilization assistance, $14.5 million in development assistance that we announced earlier this year. So we are seeking to play a role to further the interests of peace and stability in Sudan, to support those who are suffering and dying needlessly in Sudan. We have an arms embargo on Sudan under both the United Nations Act and the Special Economic Measures Act. This is very important to us in terms of our foreign policy, and part of the conversation that we will have here today is how can we do more collectively? Because what I've mentioned to you thus far is our bilateral work with Sudan. The beauty of the G7 is that it allows multilateralism to do its work. And Canada, as the host of the G7, will be seeking more collective action on Sudan.